Hi there, my name is Emma. I work with Casaiberia, a real estate agency based in Portugal and Spain. We have properties throughout Portugal and in certain areas of Spain, and our main offices are in the Algarve and in Lisbon. Today I'm speaking to Jeremiah Jordan from RHJ Accountants about the financial side of moving to Portugal. I've left Jeremiah's contact information below, as well as our contact information if you have any questions about what you see today or you're interested in buying or selling property in Portugal, and a link to a free guide to download about moving to Portugal. And I've also separated all of the topics by timestamps so you can skip ahead if there's something particularly you want to watch. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the video. Hello.
Hello, Emma.
Hello again. How is everything in rainy Porto, as we know it is now?
Rainy Porto, there's a lot of rain today, but everyone still seems happy. Everyone just seems okay. So, you know, it's not too bad in Porto.
Yeah, we're very lucky at the moment. It's nice and sunny. Well, I say lucky, I'm inside. But...
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, everything's fine. And I'm sure at the weekend, there'll be plenty of sun anyway. So everyone's going to be at the beach.
It's going to be like 31 degrees this weekend. So that'll be interesting.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, today, I just wanted to have a little bit of a general chat with you about the financial side of moving to Portugal. It's not the easiest place to move to.
No.
So I just want to have a little talk about that. Everything from fiscal numbers to fiscal representation, taxes, moving your company abroad, working from abroad, because a lot of people are now working remotely from other places. And just seeing what we can talk to you about that.
Definitely. Go ahead. What I will start with is say is, as someone that's moved from the UK to Portugal, it's a great country. I literally love everything about the place: food, weather, people. I also love English people as well. I'm just going to put that in there.
So you're like an accountant / Portugal promoter right now.
Yeah.
I
pretty much am. Exactly. It is. Exactament, as they would say in Portugal. Exactly. But it's a great place.
You moved here. When did you move here? Was it?
So I moved officially in December 2020. That's the official time I became a resident. But I've been coming since 2017 to Portugal.
Very good. Okay. And so you have a accounting company based in the UK?
Yes. So I have an accountancy firm. So I have an accountancy firm in the UK that I started in 2013, came to Portugal in 2017, fell in love with Portugal, and decided that I need an excuse to come back to Portugal. So why not set up an accountancy firm in Portugal as well?
That's a pretty good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Great.
It worked out because it means I can now go between both countries.
Exactly.
But majority of time in Portugal. So yeah. This is the only reason why I'm actually really in Portugal, just because I've got to live, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you push the benefits of being here, but really you just kind of want to be here.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what made you decide you wanted to open an accountancy firm in Portugal itself, as well as one in the UK?
Well,
aside from the fact that you wanted to move to Portugal.
So apart from wanting to move to Portugal, I thought to myself, well, look, I'm a UK accountant. I've got my accountancy firm. I have staff working there. And I thought to myself, well, surely accountants in Portugal, especially people that move from different countries. So I started looking at research to see if there were any other types of accountants in the market. And there weren't really that many that I could see. So a very, very short story of how I ended up in Portugal with an accountancy firm. I was in a restaurant. It's strange, but people will learn this. A lot of things are done over food. I was in a restaurant in Porto, Marisqueira do Porto. Is the actual name of the restaurant?
Okay.
I was speaking to a waiter, just having a chat with him, and I told him, "Oh, here's my business card. I would love to have a accountancy firm in Portugal." Within 2 days, he sent me an email. Saying, "Oh, I know a consultant called Francisco who might be able to help you." So I said, "Okay, thank you very much." Wasn't expecting it. Went to have a dinner with Francisco. Noticed the theme food again. Had a dinner with Francisco, and he said,
"All the best
I know
things
an
in
accountant
Portugal
called Frederick." And he said, "I know an accountant called Federico. And I said, okay, let me meet Federico. We met over food again.
Why not?
And it was literally love at first sight in terms of accountancy.
Oh, I'd say, wow.
Yeah.
This is accountancy and a new love.
Yeah, and literally from meeting Federico, we both decided, look, let's firm in Portugal, and the rest is history. We've kind of gone from strength to strength, and that's kind of how I ended up with the accountancy firm in Portugal. A bit of a story, but I kind of say it was written in the stars.
It was written in the stars and in the food, because
exactly.
No.
So I can understand what it's like to move from a different country, and I think the biggest thing that there's three things that I always say with people in Portugal. There's, okay, where do I live? So you need real estate. You've got to live somewhere. How do I earn money and pay tax? Because again, we all have to do that. And then the third thing is, how do I become legally resident? Because everyone wants to come to Portugal, want to stay here. You've got to be legal, basically. So they're the three things that I always say everybody needs.
You need to work it out.
Regardless. Real estate, accountancy,
money,
and lawyers.
And documents is, lawyer is definitely a big thing that people need when they come over here. And I think people underestimate really how important a good lawyer is. But also how important a good accountant is. And I want to talk you up a bit, because when I first moved over here, when I first moved over here, I didn't understand anything. Half the stuff I was dealing with, I hadn't even dealt with in the UK. So I was dealing with taxes and a fiscal number. I didn't know what anything was. And I figured quite a lot of stuff out on my own, but it seemed to get more complicated the more that you looked at it. And I spoke to a couple of different accountants here that just seemed to make it even more complicated than it was beforehand.
Definitely.
But it's a different thing, like you said, understanding tax in terms of, or finances in terms of someone coming over here as an expat to live versus someone who has lived here all their life. It's a complete different situation. And so it's not even that I was dealing with bad people, it was just dealing with people that maybe didn't understand my situation properly. But I had a phone call with you, and it was the most calming, it was the most calm I'd felt in ages after I came off the phone with you. It was. Unfortunately, the place I was working at that point didn't work out, but really you calmed me down so much and cleared so many things up. And it was just nice that you were able to give solutions to things, and you were able to give advice about things. And probably because you've been in that situation yourself, you ever say, okay, well, I would do this or I would do that. And I think it's a really important contact to have, and someone to work with that you can trust, that understands your situation and is always sort of ready to help you out. Because it's a daunting thing coming abroad. It's a daunting thing moving, well, for a lot of people anyway. If you're starting something completely new, you don't always know exactly where the path is going to lead you. And so it's a big thing. And it's important to have someone that really can understand that, can sympathize and work with you. I think it's really important. But yes.
Definitely.
So what I really wanted to start with is the biggest question I get. I speak to a lot of people that are living in the US, UK, Canada, South Africa as well. A lot of people coming over from South Africa. But the biggest thing people struggle with is really knowing where to begin. Like, what is the most important things to begin with on the financial side of moving here?
Okay. I think it's quite, because that's a question I get asked a lot too. I think when you decide to move to Portugal, whether you're from doesn't matter where you're from. I think the first thing to look at is the visa, and how do I become a legal resident in Portugal? And that could either be through a D7 visa, which is kind of called the retirement visa, because a lot of retirees come on it, but it's not just for retired people. It can be for so there's looking at, say, a D2 visa, which has to do with money, and then there's also looking at the golden visa. So I think the first thing we get asked is, how do you become resident? So by looking at one of the visa options, if you're not within the European Union, which obviously the UK is now not. So
well, another topic.
The next, it is. Yeah. The next thing that I think that I always say is it's the NIF number, which is literally a tax number, because without the NIF, you really can't do much in Portugal.
You really can't do very much.
No, exactly. You know, even for example, trying to buy a property or rent a property.
Can't buy a property, can't get a
most
bank account. No.
Yeah.
Rent a property as well.
You need a NIF number. So again, it's visa, the NIF, and then it's looking at what's called the crew. So like your crew document, which is like a residency document, that's normally another thing as well, that people always need to be aware of. I think they're kind of the major things, and kind of then looking at your potential tax liabilities and what they might be once you move.
Because a lot of people
as well.
You've got to think in terms of, say, if you're working from abroad, you think, what are your liabilities in Portugal there? But then if you also want to open up activity in Portugal, that is a different path. And some people have work they're doing abroad and income they're earning in Portugal as well.
Exactly.
So, no, for sure. And it's actually interesting what you said about the D7 visa, because a lot of people, when I talk about it with them, they don't understand that it's not just for retirees. It's actually for a lot of different people. And so they're worried that they want to work, they want to continue working in Portugal or working from abroad, which is why they don't want to go down the D7 visa route. But actually, it's not just for people that earn income from retirement or they have passive income. It's for a wide range of people.
Oh yeah, it is, and that's the thing. It's like it could be for me or you. If we weren't resident in Portugal, we could have applied for a D7 visa, for example. Yeah, you know, it's for anybody.
No, it's definitely the one most people will go for. So I think it's definitely suited for a wider range of people than, say, the golden visa is a great option if it's something that you can afford. But for a lot of people, they'll be looking at a D7 visa. So I agree with that. And so what are some of the, I mean, we've gone over it, the fiscal number. Is there anything that you wish people would have considered before they started thinking about moving to Portugal? Is there something that people, you come over and you speak to them and you realize, oh, if only you'd thought about this a few months ago, and then everything would be a lot easier now? Is there anything specifically you can think of?
Actually, yeah. So I have a little bit, right? and it's basically to do with the address. So some people get their NIF. It could be whenever. I don't know. Sometimes they do it 2 or 3 years before, and maybe sometimes they put a Portuguese address on it when they really shouldn't put a Portuguese address on it. That can then have implications for the non-habitual residency.
Yes.
We've had that in the past. So say somebody bought a holiday home, for example, in Portugal, 5 years ago, and they put a Portuguese address on it, and then they come and they say, actually, Brexit was happening, I'm going to come this year, and they move to Portugal, and we say, oh, look at the NHR, and then we see, oh, the address says Portugal, and that was 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it causes a lot of issues. Yeah, the address of your NIF is very important. That's, I would say, one of the most, it's a small thing, but it can lead to a wide variety of implications.
But again, it's things you don't think about. A lot of people wouldn't even consider it. It's just like, oh, this is my address in Portugal, therefore I will put that down as my address on my the fiscal number.
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of people that they became a resident in Portugal and they hadn't sorted their fiscal number. They'd just gone and they registered as a resident, not had a NIF, and then a couple of weeks ago wanted to then start the NHR. And of course, they've been a tax resident before December last year. And therefore, that also I found caused a lot of issues. And it was multiple people that had done that, but they've been able to get it without a NIF.
I was going to say, still on how they managed to do that. Normally, you've got to have the NIF first.
I was like, how did you do it without a NIF?
It's bizarre. Because normally, I said the first thing you do after looking at what visa is, get a NIF number. Even if you're not going to come to Portugal for another year, just get the NIF. Just at least you've got it, and you know it's there. You know it's there. You know it's there, and then just make sure you put the correct address on it. I think that's one of the biggest things. Yeah, the biggest things that I see, small, but leads to a lot of
exactly. They're small, but they lead to complications down the line for sure. Because there were lots of near mistakes that I made as well when I was coming over here, because it is a whirlwind coming over here. And what do you think that people find most difficult when they come over here in terms?
I think the most difficult, I think, is looking at the tax rates in Portugal and understanding what the double taxation agreement is.
Yeah.
And fair enough. Obviously, we as accountants are obviously here to help and guide you. So you don't have to understand everything, but trying to get a bit of a basic understanding of what you can and can't do in Portugal from a tax point of view, I would say is important. And also, obviously, looking at, well, it depends on what type of income you have as well. Whether it's kind of, say, income from dividends or working as a freelancer in Portugal. Again, there's different implications for different types of income. So I think they're kind of the biggest, more difficult things, because people just don't know. People just think, oh, well, I've come to this country, oh, I know I've got to pay tax somehow, but where, why, how much? You know, the Portuguese tax it's complex.
It is, and I feel like out of a fear of not paying something, I accidentally paid it 3 times. This is a while ago, and I was
wow.
You know, I mean, this was me being stupid, but I thought, oh my goodness, I've got a fine for paying this late. And anyway, this is just me panicking about paying tax, because it is you're dealing with a lot of stuff in a foreign language. Most of the stuff, and when it comes to taxes, is all in Portuguese. The website is in Portuguese, or the portal is on Portuguese.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The tax authority. If anybody's ever walked into the tax authority and asked for help, if you get a good person, they will help you. It is.
I feel like it's something specific, because everywhere else, generally, I encounter very helpful people in Portugal, and a lot of people speak really, really good English. But there's something about finances that I just think maybe people are it's a very stressful job, and it's a very stressful place to be. And I've met some great people there, but also it's a very difficult place to go if you're unsure and if you want some help. It's not the place that you're going to get helped. You know, don't worry, we'll sort this out for you. Like, no, you've got to go there prepared. You've got to know what you're doing. And it's very easy to get lost. And it's also very easy to get stuck in a cycle of documentation where you need one document to get another document. And then to get that document, you need another document. And it's very easy to encounter those vicious cycles. And it's kind of get out of it without the right help. So yes. And I was wondering what the difference is now. Obviously, a lot of people from the UK looking at coming over to Portugal. What are the main differences that have taken place? Brexit, and what can people
post Brexit? Yes, it's now a different world. So the main, I would say, how can I put this? So before, you could come to Portugal before December, walk around, go to the Camera, the Municipal, and sign all these documents, and you became a resident in Portugal. Might take you a couple of hours once you sign the documents. But you get this piece of paper, you accrue, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm a resident here. Cool. Can't do that anymore. No. With Brexit, now if you're from the UK, you have to come here on a visa, probably D7, golden visa, or D2. That's the only way that you can legally become a resident in Portugal, because obviously the UK is out of the EU. Another thing that is what's called fiscal representation, which is another big thing that before Brexit, citizens didn't have to worry about it. But now, if you're a non-EU resident and you've got a NIF number, even though it will have a UK address or an address from the USA, it could be anywhere that's not Portugal, you have to have a fiscal representative that it's like legal. And that representative has to be somebody that lives in Portugal. So for example, again, I'll use the holiday home example. You have a person in the UK bought a property 5-10 years ago. They rent it out, or even if they don't rent it out and they just have it sat there as as an asset, for example, they now have to have a fiscal representative to basically kind of just keep their documents, correspond with the tax authority, and it's a paid for service, where before you didn't have to do that. That's a fiscal representation and the visas, two main things that have changed post-Brexit.
What a lot of people don't realise is, like you said, if they had a house there, they'll think, okay, people that are coming over here now, that they want to come over here and buy a house now, they will need a fiscal representation. But actually, people that have been here for years don't always realise that actually it's something that they need to do. And the fines are pretty heavy in Portugal for things like that. So it's something that people need to look out for. And it just catches quite a lot of people out. You get a lot of people very confused on different groups online. Do I need one? We have a house and we think we have a NIF, but we're not sure. And it is. It's just things you just don't think about. You're like, no, this can't be me. But no, I would agree. I would think that fiscal representation and sorting out fees is a big things.
Yeah, I would say so.
And one of the things that obviously I wanted to talk about was non-habitual residency, because it's almost a bit of a buzzword, NHR. Like a lot of people talk about it, and it's kind of difficult to understand all the ins and outs of it and exactly what benefit you get from it, and whether it's what benefits are offered when you're retired versus when you're working, and what almost counts as income from abroad. Because one of the things I've noticed is the difference between if you're self-employed abroad and if you are working for a company abroad, there can be differences as well in terms of what the NHR can actually do for you. Okay, let's start with a little quick overview of what non-habitual residency is and how it applies to a few different situations. So for someone working remotely, living in Portugal, working remotely for a company from the US or from the UK, or has a company, just a general overview of what that would mean.
So the non-habitual residency was something brought in by the Portuguese government early, I think it's 2007. It might be a different date, but I know it was in the 2000s. The reason I think of it is because that's when the crash happened, and I think Portugal as a country said, actually, we need to attract people to the country to literally come and spend their money. This is, to me, the whole point of why they introduced the NHR. Portugal needs money circulating through the economy. So it was brought in, and what the NHR really is, it gives a number of tax benefits, I would say, in regards either foreign earned income, whether that's sort of employment income, it could be self-employed income, capital gains, royalties, all different types of income, or it even gives tax advantages to somebody living in Portugal that's come from a different country, where it can give you advantages of a lower tax rate compared to the normal Portuguese standard rates, really. So, for example, if we look at somebody that's moved from the UK, because we have a lot of clients move from the UK, say they have, for example, dividends, what the NHR states is, as long as the dividends are taxed in the country of source, or can be taxed in the country of source, it is exempt under the non-habitual residency scheme. So, normally the general rule I say is if it's taxed somewhere else or can be taxed somewhere else, it's normally not going to be taxable under the NHR in Portugal. Obviously, that's subject to the double taxation agreement as well. That's kind of one of the big advantages. If you're, say, having foreign earned income but living in Portugal, you get some definitely good exemptions. And then you look at somebody that is, say, living in Portugal, and I don't know, for example, they're self-employed. So say they're a self-employed person. So normally, as a self-employed person, they'd pay what's known as the Portuguese progressive rate, which range from 14.5% all the way to 8%. It's on a banded scale, obviously different amounts of income. But what Portugal states is, if you have what's called a high value activity, which is like a list of activities. So I don't know, if you're a doctor, for example, IT consultant or web developer, marketing, PR and marketing, you can actually have your income taxed at a flat rate of 20% rather than the progressive rates. So again, it's still trying to attract these people to come to Portugal, even if they're just going to come and work as well, which is good for the Portuguese state because they're now getting 20% income of something, somebody to come here. I think they're the main things for the NHR. It has tax benefits. It has some definitely good tax benefits.
No, for sure. I just think it's a very individual thing. So it's definitely a good idea to speak to someone about your situation. So it's one thing applying for the NHR, but actually working out how it can work for you afterwards is a completely different thing. So it's great that you have NHR status, but to make that NHR status work for you, it's definitely worth having a good conversation with someone that can help you with that. For sure. Definitely. Because a lot of people say, oh, I'm under the NHR, but I don't really know what that means. I don't really know how it works in my situation. And you realize that the more questions you start thinking of, the more questions come as well. I think this is a big thing as well with people working more remotely because of COVID. Like a lot of people, the person I spoke with today, he said, well, I can work remotely, so I've now decided to move to Portugal. In about 3 days, he's like, no, I want to go over here. And there's another one as well that's thinking of coming from the US again because he's able to work remotely after all the restrictions. And he said, well, you're welcome to continue working from home. So it's brought in this whole new group of people that are able to work from anywhere that I think, well, can I come here and work under the NHR? So if they are employed in a different country, then they will be taxed at that country in that country, and the NHR will be a good scheme for them to be under.
Yeah, definitely, because you've got that foreign earned income tax benefit depending on the income, the type of income.
Yeah, and if you didn't say if you weren't under the non-habitual residency tax scheme, and you came over to Portugal and you didn't think about it, and say you went past the deadline and now you are living in Portugal, you're a tax resident in Portugal, but your money comes from abroad, what are the ramifications of that? Would there be money tax? Would it be taxed as your money came in, or
all depends on what the income is, or the type of income, I would say. So with Portugal, I call Portugal Big Brother. Once you're a tax resident in Portugal, Portugal says they want to see your worldwide income. Everything has to be declared. Yeah, that's the standard. Once it's declared, obviously, if you pay tax, if you've got a double taxation agreement with that country, and you pay tax in that country, potentially you shouldn't be paying tax on it again. But again, obviously, it's kind of subject to the double tax agreement, really, I would say, as well.
And if you didn't obtain that status beforehand, would things be different? As in, would you be paying a different amount of tax versus obtaining
well, because if you didn't have the NHR, you'd potentially be looking at the progressive rates.
Okay.
Really, as well.
To be progressive rates, even if you're working abroad.
Can do is they can say, because you've still got to declare your worldwide income. Say you pay tax on it, but say the tax wasn't a high enough rate compared to the worldwide income. So it varies. It varies, and as you said, it's the individual situation. You've got to look at it and say, actually, you've got this income. Oh, you've got some more income somewhere else as well. Oh, okay, this might not be an issue.
It's a surprise.
But now we just need to plan.
I know. Whatever anyone asks me about it, I'm like, just do it. Just get it sorted. Get that status, because once that deadline is passed, because if you become a tax resident before December of that year or whatever year you're in, then you need to apply for it by the 31st of March the following year.
March the following year.
So say if it was you came in December 2020, then you would need to have applied for it by March 31st, 2021. And I think I would always say just do it, and then you can see what it can do for you afterwards, because missing that deadline is just not something that you want to deal with. So and also there's a thing maybe for digital nomads, because they come and they're living in Portugal, they have tax residency, they have NHR status, but we're in this weird, not weird, it's an unusual situation where you're working in Portugal, your company might be based abroad, but really everything you're doing is from Portugal itself. So are there any issues that get a bit sort of tricky if that is the situation you're in?
I would say it depends on the income stream, really, because then we'd look at the income stream. Say it's from a company and you're being paid dividends, but those dividends are from a foreign company. Fair enough, you can be living in Portugal, have the NHR. We then look at it and say, well, it's foreign earned income, and the dividend tax is being paid somewhere else. It should be exempt under the NHR. I would say it depends for the digital nomads. Get those words right. I'd say it really depends.
It's a little bit of a mouthful.
It is, especially when my mind's always now trying to think Portuguese words as well.
It's good though. Going in there.
It depends. It really depends for digital nomads. it's the taxes, and I'd say it always depends on where you are tax resident. If you're tax resident in Portugal, you've got to declare something in Portugal. You're gonna something has to be declared, and then we can look at the other side of where the income's coming.
I think those sort of situations that you definitely need help from someone that understands both sides of things, because it's very easy to get caught out. And I think it's also in the mindset of not everyone who works remotely and has set up a business that, you know, allows them to be a digital nomad, but they don't always think about that there will be ramifications for it. It's very easy to forget when you're working. And also if you come from a place where, you are under the tax band, for example. A lot of the things I had to think about here, I just never had to think about in the UK because I was under the tax band. Everything seemed very automatic. And it was only here I was like, well, I've got to do this and I have to do this. Like, really? All these things come up and you don't think about it. And I think a lot of people that come here are the same in many ways. And one of the things that also comes up as well is if you are under the NHR, say you have 10 years, you're in your 50s or 60s, then you have the NHR for 10 years and then you want to retire and you want to keep living in Portugal. Are there any issues that can come up with that as well? Because obviously, say if you've got 3 years of retirement under the NHR and then afterwards, what happens to your pension if you want to continue living with Portugal, but you're not under the NHR anymore?
So what happens with it? So obviously under the NHR for pensions, which is actually really good, it's taxed at a flat rate of 10% currently if you have the NHR and you're retired. As soon as that 10-year period ends, what Portugal then states is, well, look, you're a Portuguese resident. We're going to tax you as a normal Portuguese person. So it's going to be those progressive rates. I mean, they're saying you might be able to reapply on the NHR, but we've not seen that so far. And the government haven't announced anything. They've not announced anything. So I'm gonna take it once that
no Portuguese right.
That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bit easy to think, okay, what happens when this is over? Because 10 years feels like a long time, but it can creep up very quickly. And so you basically, as soon as that NHR period is over, you are taxed in the same way as a Portuguese resident without NHR or a Portuguese citizen would be. Okay, and then that would be the same for income coming on abroad. So there wouldn't be any additional tax. So they would say there was income from abroad or a pension from abroad. Would there be any additional tax above the progressive rates to bring that in?
No. So literally the whole income's declared because it's pension, 10%. If you've got some, I don't know, property income or other income, it all gets put on the tax return. We work out the taxes, and that's what you've got to pay according to the Portuguese rates. I would say. Yeah,
because one of the first conversations I had about this was with an accountant here. I don't think we understood each other, should we say? But she told me that I had to. It was an extra 28% tax on top of the progressive taxes if I wanted to bring money in from abroad. So I don't know where this came from, but I said, well, if we're working abroad and I earn my money from abroad, so there'll be an extra 28% tax. I don't know if that makes any sense, or whether it was just a misunderstood conversation.
Capital gains, maybe. So 28% tax rate for capital gains, but I don't quite, I don't understand.
We don't know. It could have been exactly. I don't know.
But again, I think that's the thing about having accountants that kind of know both different kind of countries as well. That's where it probably comes into as well.
And is it different, say, if someone was coming from the UK or coming from Canada or the USA? Would it be different in terms of their situation? Does it differ from country to country depending on where that person's coming from?
I would say the biggest thing is it's always looking at the double taxation agreement between Portugal and the country wherever that person comes from. In terms of taxes, obviously moving here, it's going to be pretty much the same. It's outside the EU, but it's a tax. It's double taxation agreement because that's your basis for then how we treat the taxes. Going forward, that's like the biggest thing. I always think, I wonder who thought of these double taxation agreements. They were a smart person. Because without that, the world would be lost.
We've just caused so many different issues. And then sometimes we speak to some people that are on that list and they're in an area where there's not a double taxation agreement. I thinking, what do you do now? What happens? But I actually think really looking at some of the things that people should do before they move out here. Do you think having that sort of conversation with someone, talking through your situation and seeing what can be done would be...
I always say do the tax planning before you move.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still do it after you move. It just slightly becomes a bit more complicated.
Yes.
So
it does. And then you have some surprises you weren't really expecting. Going back to retirement is obviously if you earn your money abroad, you would have to declare your worldwide income every year to Portugal annually. But when you're retired, is it slightly different in terms of declaration of the pension? Like, is there anything, is there a different set of files that you need to submit annually when you're retired as opposed to working?
No, literally, once you're retired, if you still got income coming in, which hopefully you have because you're retired, you need to live.
Exactly.
And guess what? Portugal want to tax you. It's luxury, but they want to tax.
Yes.
They want to make sure they tax you. Nothing changes really. You've got to fill in the tax return every year.
Okay.
Actually, the tax returns are from January to December each year.
Okay.
That's the tax period.
The tax period.
January to December, and they're always normally filed between April and June. The following year is when the annual tax return is filed.
Yeah, whether you are retired or you're working, you still have to file everything. Basically.
The tax return.
That's what you do as well. So regardless of working, everything has to be declared, or whether you're retired or not, everything has to be declared. Okay, that's something I didn't know actually. I got asked. I don't know. You're retired with a pension, but
Portugal still want to tax you.
Yeah, so they still want to know what's going on. That's the thing.
Exactly.
And what if you would say before retirement, or maybe after? You never know. But if you were looking at opening a business in Portugal, so you're looking at opening up your own business, not just becoming self-employed or like as a freelancer and opening activity, but you want to open a business. How different is it opening a business in Portugal versus maybe just starting up versus say renting a property or working as a freelancer? How different would it be to set up an actual company?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say with a company is in Portugal likes paper a lot. Okay, Portugal likes paper, and they like people to sign paper a lot as well. Yeah. So make sure you've got a good pen and a strong hand.
For sure.
You'll be signing a lot of documents. Yeah, you'll be signing a lot of documents. But in terms of the process,
it's painful. Process,
you're setting a company. It's normally done through the lawyers because everything has to be registered at like the local council, for example, and they have to know what the company does, its activity, its shareholders. In the UK, it's very simple. Now I see the difference. It's very simple company in the UK. In Portugal, not so simple. And as I said, you need the lawyers. But once the company's set up, you need a bank account, which again, be prepared to wait for maybe an hour to 2 hours in a bank.
It was 2.5 hour appointment to sign the paperwork.
A lot of people have the experience. Again, it depends. Portugal, this is what they do. I love it, but this is what
paperwork is king.
So you'll definitely you'll need the bank account. But once everything's set up, you've got the bank, you are ready to go, you're ready to start trading. And in terms of trading in Portugal, one thing that is actually noted, every company in Portugal has to have a certified accountant, which is a member of the order, so the Order of Certified Contabilistas, the OCC. It's a legal requirement. You cannot trade without having a certified accountant. So they have to be appointed. Hopefully you choose us.
You should.
But once they're appointed, hey, cheap plug. It's a cheap plug, but I'm going to do it. But yeah, in terms of the company, you can obviously trade and be set up for VAT, for payroll. And in terms of the tax rates, the standard tax rate for corporation tax, or corporate tax as they call it, it's 21% in Portugal. But then depending on where you, which kind of state or like city you live in, there's normally a municipal tax of between 0.5% to 1.5%. I know in Lisbon it's 1.5, but it's the big city, so of course they're going to charge a lot more. Yeah, so you've always got to be aware of that. And the first 17,000 is only taxed in profit is only taxed at 15%. So it's a little bit of a break. Yeah, I would say
a little bit social security.
Yeah,
and dealing with that as
a
company.
Yeah,
and as an individual.
Yeah, so as a company, well, as a company. The social security rates for employers and employees comes to a total of 34.75%. So if you've got employees in Portugal, expect to pay 34.75% in terms of employer, social security for the employee and employer as a combined total. So it's quite high in Portugal, the social security rates, I would say. But generally, again, depending on where you are, the wages in Portugal are a lot lower than the countries, for example. It really depends, obviously, on kind of where you are in the country.
And if you're employed by a company, you end up paying, is it 11% for social security?
Yeah, 11%.
You are an employee,
because
the employer takes half of that, and then technically half of that. And then if you're a freelancer, it's 23 point something percent. Is that right?
As a freelancer, every freelancer has to pay social security at 21.4% based on 70% of their total income.
Okay, so
but
so
but you get a 1 year exemption as well, actually. So Portugal's really nice for that first year. And they're like, hey, we're going to tax you now.
You're like, hi, welcome to Portugal, the real Portugal.
Exactly. And in terms of VAT, the VAT rate is 23.5, 6% for pleasurement local, which is kind of your Airbnbs. That's actually at 6%. But that's probably a good factor to know, a good thing to know for people that obviously come in to buy properties, then rent them out for Airbnbs.
So how much was that again?
The VAT rate is 6%.
6%. Okay.
6%.
6%.
Yeah, in Portugal, it's called the alojamento local, is what it's called in Portugal.
That's a whole other topic. I need to talk about renting properties.
You short term.
A lot of people ask about this. We're thinking about doing this and opening a pizza business. This is one of them. We want a pizza business and an Airbnb. I was like, okay, well, it's going to be an interesting lot of paperwork that you're going to be dealing with.
Exactly. And just one quick thing on the company. So for a lot of companies, they might not be aware of this, but there's actually a way in Portugal to only pay 5% corporate tax. There's a way to do this, and it can actually be a good advantage for a lot of companies that have obviously large corporate taxes in say another country and want to come to Portugal and work from Portugal or export their services from Portugal. So it's something that you should always bear in mind. Portugal, they have some good tax advantages in the country.
Yeah, if you can figure out your system, it can be a really nice system to work with. It's just about figuring it out. One of the things as well is, like, I read an article on your website about this sort of benefits of maybe being a startup in Lisbon, and there's an increase in startup companies in Lisbon, particularly tech companies. So I've noticed there's an increase in people coming to Lisbon. I think partly because of the time zone as well, the fact that Portugal is the same time as the UK, and it's a little bit ahead of the US. So a lot of people are seeing that as a benefit to, well, starting up a company, but particularly I've seen tech companies looking into this. So it could be an interesting path to go down.
Yeah, I think Lisbon's definitely a tech hub right now, I would say. A lot of companies are going there. A lot of
the graduates as well that come out are tech graduates. We've got a lot of good people to choose from. And another thing as well I want to touch on is people that are working or that whether their job revolves around it or whether they have investments in it, but cryptocurrency. So this is something that's coming up a lot, and I get so many questions about it. So many. I didn't know it was such a big thing really until people started to ask me about cryptocurrency. So what is the situation with that in Portugal? So if you don't know where to start.
Cryptocurrency is having a boom right now, it seems to me. And it seems like a lot of people want to come to Portugal with cryptocurrency. And the main advantage is if you come as a person and you have cryptocurrency, it's currently, and I say the key word is currently right now, not taxed in Portugal as a person. However, I have to say, however, if the cryptocurrency is considered your trading income, which basically means you trade in this day in, day out, it's your only income, this is the only thing you do, then Portugal says, well, actually, this is really your job. You need to be registered normally as a freelancer or registered as a company. And you would have to pay tax. So that's always something that you have to be aware of. If it's considered trading income or trading activity, it's going to get taxed in Portugal. The other thing is, currently on the Portuguese tax return, there is nowhere to put cryptocurrency. They don't recognize cryptocurrency in Portugal, which is why they don't tax it. Yeah, they do not recognize it. Yesterday, I was actually at Millennium BCP, and I was speaking to one of the bank managers, and I just said, "Oh, so somebody wants to bring cryptocurrency. Does the bank recognize cryptocurrency?" They said, "Nope, we don't recognize it." No. Even the banks in Portugal do not recognize cryptocurrency. No. So right now, said, come in as a person. It's not considered trading activity. Come to Portugal. And I would say we're always checking, and I'd say everyone check. Yeah. We don't want to wake up one day and see Portugal say, "Oh, this cryptocurrency. Maybe we should start taxing this."
Maybe. We're gonna want to throw in.
Yeah.
It's a grey area.
No, it's fine.
Anyways.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do have it on the side.
It is a grey area.
If it's for example, if someone has, I don't know, property in another country, income from property, and then they also involved in cryptocurrency, they were trading cryptocurrency, would be a secondary income. So therefore it wouldn't be taxed because the primary income would be those holiday rentals or the property rentals in the UK. Okay, that's interesting. Because it's things are moving, and I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the next few years, particularly. Yeah. With the change in the style that we work, with an increase in remote working, with an increase in cryptocurrencies because they're growing, they're not going to go anywhere. This is here to stay, and just with the ramifications of coronavirus, I think, and Brexit is another thing. But I think there'll be a lot of changes that we're seeing in the way things are taxed and the way businesses run. And so it's a thing to work out. You have to always keep updated. I mean, this is up to date for now, but it could change in 6 months. And this is why I tell people. It could. Speak for a tax advisor or an accountant, because we just don't know. Like, we could literally in a few months, we could wake up one morning and everything changes. Yeah. So it's true. It's because sometimes people want to say, "Oh, I'm planning to move here in 3 years." And I said, "Well, that's great that you're planning to move here in 3 years, but a lot can change then, so I can talk to you now." Yes. But really, like, just do a follow-up 6 months before you're thinking of coming here, because a lot can change. And I mean, everywhere, you have to be aware of it everywhere, but particularly if you're moving abroad. And definitely. So you've got to look at. And so really, I just want to know what sort of services that you provide for people coming over here, for people that are resident here. Okay. And the differences between them. Yeah, I mean, I would say in terms of RHJ accountants and what we can provide, namely accounting and tax, whether it's tax planning, setting up a company in Portugal, doing taxes for both countries, say the UK, even the US. We work with a US accountant, and obviously Portugal. Accounting, tax, that's our bread and butter. Yeah. And I would like to humbly say we are very good at what we do. Yeah. I agree. We're definitely very good at what we do. Yeah. And then in terms of kind of, I would say, add-on services, when you're talking about, say, things like the visas, for example, getting a NIF, we work with partners. I would kind of say, when you come to RHJ, we're kind of the relocation package almost, in a way, because ask us something, and if we can't do it, we probably know somebody that can do it. Just because of the connections. Yeah, just because of the connections that we have, and obviously the experience. I'd say that they're our major services, I would say. Yeah, I think it's really handy to have just to have good connections for sure, because it's overwhelming. There's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said before, we take it for granted how much you know once you've moved here for 6 months. But it's very difficult to think back to how it was when you first arrived, and you didn't know anything, didn't know what was going to happen. It'd be different.
No.
There's so much that you think, oh yeah, I didn't know that when I came here. And of course someone will be worried about that, and they would be confused about that. So yes, so you offer, say if someone were working abroad, would it be services you offer for someone that is their income comes from abroad versus their income coming from Portugal? So someone that was having a business here, or they were set up as a freelancer or something like that.
Yeah, so if they've got income coming from abroad and they need, say, for example, NHR, tax in Portugal, we could do that for them. If they have, say they're from the UK and they need tax returns doing in the UK, because we find a lot that people say to us, actually, you know what, if you're going to do the tax in Portugal, why not do it in the UK or the US, and we just keep everything under one roof, because it's a lot easier, because our teams obviously always speak to each other, so it makes sense rather than having to go outside the family, as I like to call it. But it makes sense. And obviously if you're in Portugal and you've got a company, for example, then we can give them the best advice possible, really.
What is the difference principally between people that work in international? I mean, that's big, but like an accountant that is aware of, well, an international accountant, it definitely worth working with someone that is aware of the taxation laws in both the country that they're earning money from and Portugal.
100%.
I mean, I agree.
I'm obviously biased. I would say, but it makes so much sense. If you've got an accountancy firm that understands taxes in both countries, or understands enough at least for say another country, it's going to be more beneficial in terms of your tax planning, rather than. And there's nothing against accountants in one country, but they might not be aware of the double taxation agreements, for example, of another country. You have a accounting partner in that country, because we have different clients from different countries. We have to familiarize ourselves with taxation agreements. For example, Estonia, it could be a random country, France, which is a very high in tax, by the way. It really depends. Yeah, it is. So I would say having an international accountant will give you that fit. And we normally know another accountant in another country as well.
Exactly.
Just because again, we're speaking to different people in different countries all the time.
It's not even necessarily in terms of someone being better or worse, but it's just working with someone that can understand as well your situation, can work with you. I think it's really, really important to have that support when you're moving somewhere else. So yes, for sure.
Great, I agree.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah.
Perfect.
I think that's everything. Cool. I mean, I probably will think of something in 20 minutes. Think, I wish I'd asked that, but all is good.
Yeah. Oh, I should have asked that one. Yeah.
That happens on a daily basis.
It's good. I enjoyed it.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, really.
And I will leave.
Oh, you're welcome.
All your contact information below, and all the links to your website, how to contact you, and I'm sure that you will be of great help to many people.
Thank you. And likewise, obviously, with your real estate, again, I know this is the place they need to come to. So
thank you very much.
If you want a property in Portugal, they need to go to you.
It's one of the main parts of moving here. You want property, you need financial advice, and I mean, you just need to come to Portugal, because Portugal's
exactly
wonderful. Really, it is. It's a great place to be.
That's true. I think the main thing from this conversation is just come to Portugal. Just come to Portugal,
eat food,
live here, and enjoy life.
Make sure you don't fall into any of the traps that can come up. Anything we discussed earlier on, make sure that's sorted first, and then you can just enjoy the food and the sun, and then we're all
That's true.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I agree.